So we start to consider plyometrics to help support some of the cutting, jumping, landing type tasks such as running or on-field sports that require this sort of exercise. So plyometrics are really important in terms of functionality. They help improve the dynamic stiffness of the tendon, so the ability of that tendon to transfer load from the muscle to the actual ankle or the foot itself. Dynamic stiffness also meaning the ability of that tendon to lengthen and shorten quickly under load and accommodate that. It helps to reduce overall risk. It helps to improve overall performance. We start to consider the function of it in terms of developing speed when coming from strength. So if this is the requirements of running and then this is the strength training itself, what can we put in the middle to bridge the gap between the two? It helps to reduce our peak landing forces so that when we do land, it's not so stiff. The tendon has the ability to accommodate that load. And then also improves the rate of force development, so how much spring and force we can generate coming off our foot and our ankle, and then off we go. So plyometrics are super important exercises, but we also need to make sure that we tick some boxes before giving them a go. We need to make sure that our activities of daily living, we have minimal symptoms throughout the course of the day, if any symptoms. We need to make sure that we've got adequate dorsiflexion range of motion, so the motion of pulling our toes towards ourselves, so bending the ankle, or if we're looking at when we're landing, do we have adequate dorsiflexion as the knee can accommodate that load and move over the toes? If we don't, it just means that as a result of the ankle not moving well enough, we're going to get premature loading of the knee, or we're going to be landing with more of a stiff knee as a result. Some of the other things that we need to consider is, do we have an adequate strength base to be able to do these plyometrics? We want to try and do at least a 6-week program of strength training first before doing so. In terms of fitness, a lot of people huff and puff if they do these for the first time. So can we do 30 minutes of steady state cardiovascular exercise? It doesn't need to be intense, but it just needs to be something to formulate a baseline. So you can see that we want to try and tick some boxes first before going forth with these types of exercises. Now, considerations for plyometric exercises is we're either going to have baby plyometrics or we're going to have normal plyometrics. So with the baby plyos, if we're thinking about the skipping motion, we're not really getting too much knee bend, ankle bend. So I would consider 2 contacts with the ground with a motion like skipping to be considered 1 normal repetition versus being able to sort of come up if we had a step in front of us and really driving up on that step. That would be considered more 1 contact, so a little bit more demand as the knee and the ankle move through greater range of motion. A couple of the other things we might want to assess even as a clinician or a therapist before starting plyometric exercise is looking at simple tasks and looking at the strategies of the person to complete those tasks. So if we ask someone to step off a box, we want to look at their landing strategies, because if they're jumping off a box or an aerobic step, and if we're finding that during that landing motion that the knee is falling inwards and we're adopting those poor biomechanics, then we're going to run into injury risks as a result. So we might look at something like a step down. We might be looking overall at like some sort of little hopping motion on the spot to look at the position of the knee, making sure that we're not getting any buckling in of that. And also making sure of something like a tuck jump, whereby we do a series of 5 jumps on the spot and making sure that the knees are level with the feet and that we're not landing and the knees are falling inwards. So trying to dial in some functional tests first to see what that's like before then going into providing the plyometric exercises for the individual.